Hi, good morning. My name is Kevin Millington. I'm with the Empire State Aerosciences Museum, and today is Saturday, February 14th, 2015. I'm here with a very special guest, one of our museum founders, really, Fran Miner. Fran, thank you again for
You're welcome, Kevin.
for the opportunity to talk about your experiences. Why don't you tell us a little about yourself, Fran, where you were born, when?
Well, I was born up in Glens Falls, and we lived on a farm out in the town of Hartford, which is about 15 miles east of Glens Falls.
Oh.
And when I was about 12 years old, Dad said, I can't do the farming anymore. So bought a little house in the village of Hartford. And I spent from then until I was 18 there and went to high school there.
Oh. And then after high school, did you start your career? Or?
I graduated from high school on June, let's say the 20th, and my notice for the draft was received on September 10th.
1942?
1943.
1943, okay.
Didn't give me much time to do anything at that point. And I ended up going to Albany and getting sworn in here, and then actually reporting for duty on December 30th of 1943.
This was with the U.S. Army?
Pardon?
Was this with the U.S. Army?
With the U.S. Army, yes.
Good.
And we thought, a bunch of us had taken tests to do some Air Corps training. And we thought we had done all right, and we were put on a train and we started going southwest. And we all thought we were headed toward Langley. However, about halfway there, about a day and a half or 2 days out, the train all of a sudden changed directions, and we ended up in Camp Blanding, Florida, infantry.
Oh.
So apparently they had more people in the Air Corps than they needed right at that moment.
Langley Air Force Base is outside of Washington, D.C., isn't it?
The one I'm thinking of is
Virginia?
Texas.
Oh, okay.
Maybe I'm saying the wrong name. I can't remember, but...
Laughlin Air Force Base.
Okay. Laughlin, that was it.
Yeah.
Laughlin, yeah. So that's how I got to be in the infantry.
Oh. And then you went overseas?
Yes, I ended up in Italy, France, and Germany. And I got to Germany with a gun in my back, you might say, because we were German prisoners of war. And there was a bunch of us that got across the river, and our tanks did not get over to help us.
What river was this?
I can't tell you the name of it. It was a tributary to the Rhine.
Oh, okay.
And so I went across the Rhine itself as a prisoner of war.
Oh, geez.
And several months there. And
how long were you a prisoner of war?
I was a prisoner of war approximately 4 months, and then our own troops came back and repatriated us. Liberated us, yes.
Okay. So that must have been 1945?
Yes.
Okay.
And it was mighty good to see them coming in with their large tanks to get us, even though it scared us a little bit. Mm-hmm. But we had been taken from the prison camp and marched for, I'm guessing, 20, 25 days to stay ahead of our own troops catching up with us. Mm-hmm. And so then they took the bunch of us, put us on C-47 hospital planes, flew us back to Reims, France, to the American Field Hospital. And when I got on the scale, the nurse said, "Oh, good, you're 90 pounds."
Oh, God.
I don't know what was good about it, but at least I was walking, so.
Yeah.
And from then on, it was a case of coming home to New York and getting a military medical leave, put on a few pounds, and they didn't think I had enough action, so they sent me to the West Coast, to Fort Ord, California, the home of the 3rd Infantry, and served as an information education non-com for about 4 months there, and then they said, well, you've had enough service, we'll let you go home. So.
My father had a similar, I think, military experience. He was never captured, but he was in North Africa, Italy, France, and Germany, and he was in the tank corps.
Yes. So, you might have been there to get me out of the prison camp. Who knows?
But Fran, I see you have some wonderful.
Yeah, it's up to the other. There you go.
Medals here.
Well, yeah, I got the, of course, the Purple Heart.
Could you point that out?
Pardon?
Could you point that out?
Oh, the Purple Heart is right there in the center.
Okay.
And then the Bronze Star and the Silver Star.
What is the significance of a Purple Heart as an injury?
That's an injury, yeah.
Okay.
And the Bronze Star was for, they call it valerious doing, the various type, and the Silver Star is one step above that. And the story of those two medals, I didn't know that I had them or was going to get them till 50 years after I was discharged.
Is that right?
My wife said, what do you want for your birthday? And I said, I'd like to get a book and find out a little bit about the history of the 3rd Infantry. She managed to get me that book out of the Albany Library, and reading through it, I saw where the tank had been sunk, that was the one that was supposed to come across the river with us and keep us from getting into problems. It sunk the bridge right in the middle of the river. But it also, reading on, I read the whole list of Bronze Star winners. There was my name.
Really?
And I kept reading in the Silver Stars, and there's my name again.
So you were awarded these medals at the time, but had no knowledge of it?
Had no knowledge of it. And so I wrote a letter to Congressman Solomon, and he was able to go ahead and get the medals and also get the exact information as to why I received them.
So it's probably like in the 1990s by the time you got
Yes.
That's quite a story.
That in itself, yes.
Yeah. How about these other medals down here?
Well, those are things that basically are just, everybody got one of those. It was, I think the one's a good conduct medal, and rifleman, you get, somewhere along the line, you take your test in shooting, and you get those too.
So you were discharged from the Army in 1945?
Yes.
Okay.
And in 46, I went to school down to Becker Junior College in Worcester, Mass. I thought good in business and in math, and so I went down here and studied accounting. And 2 years in accounting, and then I got a very high offer from GE to come to work for them. $41 a week.
Oh.
That was the best that you could possibly get back in those days. And that was to be on the financial training program.
Was that General Electric right here in Schenectady?
Yes.
Okay.
And I spent 39 years with GE in the accounting field. So.
Oh, okay. Now, at what point did you, I know the museum was founded. We just celebrated our 30th anniversary.
Yes.
So you were, I know you were involved in the museum, Fran, right at its founding.
Yeah.
In the early 80s. And how did that come about?
Well, I think basically I got interested again in aviation, and when I was 58 years old, just prior to retiring, I said, I'm going to go learn to fly. And so I checked in at Richmore and found out that they had the school up at Saratoga Airport, and went up there and started learning to fly. Enjoyed it very much.
Is that right? You fly a Cessna 172 or?
Well, we started out in the 150.
Okay.
And went to the 172. And I didn't mind the training. I enjoyed the training except for learning how to get out of stalls. Whether you take the nose of the plane and send it straight up, and all of a sudden you can't fly anymore. It hasn't got enough power to pull you. And all of a sudden you feel your thing sliding backwards. And then, okay, what do you do next? And you start, the nose drops off, and what you want to do is pull back on the thing.
Yeah.
That's wrong. You got to push that thing ahead, get enough flying speed.
You want to go into a dive and pick up more speed.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Before you pull it back. And they used to take me up and do that over Saratoga Lake. I guess they figured if I didn't pull it up soon enough, at least I'd get in the water.
Yeah. Did you ever, when you were flying, did your plane ever stall when you had
No.
to put that into practice?
No. I was too scared to fool around. And
well, I, like you, had taken a few lessons over at Richmore, probably not as many as you, but I thought one of the scariest things is the effect of wind. Just how much moving the plane around, and we didn't do stall training, but just things that you don't expect, really. Unexpectedly, you're saying, geez, I'm 1,500 feet lower than I was 2 seconds ago. So did you get your license, and did you?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I got my license, and about the same time, I can't remember exactly who I talked to, but they said that they were going to be having an air show. And I said, what do you mean you're going to have an air show? He said, well, we're forming a museum, and this ought to be a good way to raise some money.
Oh, okay.
And so I went down and, jumped in and said, okay, here I am.
Who were the first people that you met there?
Well, Ernie Tatro was one of them.
Oh, sure.
And Carl Battaglia.
Yep.
And there was 4 or 5 others, and I'll be darned if I can remember them. Seeing it was last year, I can't remember,
Now, you told me before that I joined the museum, I think, recall, Fran, around 2000, and it was not at its current site now, which is in the hangar building and the adjacent building over at Rudy Chase Drive. Where was it?
It was, well, when I first went there, they had no museum. We were just using an office above the Richmore Aviation, where their office is today.
Yeah, okay.
And we'd meet there and talk about what we're going to do. And Ernie and a few others had gone over to the Schenectady Museum. There was a storage unit, some kind of I call it a barn, and that's where they were starting to accumulate some of the artifacts, including a large engine, which we ended up moving much later, but that was quite a job. And then we heard that there was going to be this, what is now Gallery 2 building, was available, and we went up and looked at it, and I didn't think we ought to get near it because it was really bad. But we decided we were going to do it anyway, and went in and used putty knives and that sort of thing to scrape the grease and oil off the walls.
This was in the mid-'80s then?
It could have been.
1985 or something like that?
Yeah, it must have been around 85 because, that's a good time, about the time I was retiring.
Mm-hmm.
And we got it cleaned up, made it look halfway decent, and then started bringing in things. And later on, we decided, well, we don't have enough space, so we got to add on. And we had a chance to get the Akagi. That was donated by, gosh, I can't think of his name.
Charles Woods?
Yes, Charlie Woods from The Great Escape.
Yes.
And I hadn't seen it, and several of us hadn't seen it. But when he brought it down in a big tractor trailer and they unloaded it, we said, wow, what are we going to do with this?
That is one of the most remarkable exhibits in the museum. And as Fran said, the museum acquired it. It was a prop for the movie Tora, a 1970 movie, and of course they didn't have computer graphics then, so they
That's right.
constructed this. I recall it's 37 feet long.
Yeah.
And we played a movie, right over in there. But you led the team that constructed the room that accommodates it.
Right. There was nothing there. We had to put that room on, and that meant cement floor and building it up from scratch and hooking it on to what originally was Gallery 2.
Oh, okay.
And that was the first edition. And then we decided we were going to start the offices upstairs in what is now the library area.
Yes, okay.
And so the hallway up there was used, and walking through into what is now the major portion of the library is where we just set up a couple of desks, and that was a basic office. Mm-hmm. But along the line, we decided, let's have a pancake breakfast now and then. And so we got stoves and things set up, and what you see up there is a hallway nowadays.
Yeah.
And that was our kitchen. So anybody coming to breakfast had to walk through the kitchen to get into the other room.
Where that, yeah, no kidding.
Where the tables were to eat.
So now of course we have the monthly breakfast over in the hangar.
Yes.
Beautiful community room. And
yes.
I didn't know that you had breakfast up in the.
Oh yeah.
Well, they're actually really enjoyable. We have them every month, and I think, Fran, you were one of the organizers of it.
The breakfast?
Yes, the breakfast, and I know that over in our current community room where we have our monthly breakfast, we still have inside of the cabinets. You had all the procedures for what needed to be done and what kind of all the food and set up material. So you were very organized on that.
I got pretty good at flipping pancakes and making scrambled eggs.
Yeah, I remember when I first started, volunteering for them, helping out. It was quite a while before they let me on the grill, but they originally, I was wondering, gee, it looks so effortless, but it was so much work that went into them. And I remember, I think it was Joyce or Newkirk or John Panofsky said, well, here, Fran Miner had all these procedures, and they're right there, so you did a great job. They're still very popular.
That was one of the easier jobs.
Yeah. What year did the museum expand into the current hangar?
I wish I could tell you, but it must have been around, I'm going to say 90, 95, somewhere in that period of time.
And that was the former General Electric Flight Test Center?
Yes, and I'm trying to remember why all of a sudden it became available, but Richmore, I believe, had the new building, and they decided they didn't need to store aircraft up there anymore. And so the county had the building available, and we jumped to the chance of saying, okay, let's take it over. Don't know where we're going to get the money, but let's do it anyway. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, we were able to take the building over, and what is now the kitchen and dining area was a terrible old machine shop, and we didn't know whether we'd get all the junk out of it or not, but after several weeks and months of cleaning, we got it out, and again, once we had it up to that point, that was where we could have classes for children. And then we decided, okay, we got to do something with the breakfast. We can't have it up above the other side. Yeah. It's just plain too small, and everybody walking through the kitchen didn't work out good. So we added in there and got it going, and just kind of normally expanded as we went along.
Yeah. Well, Fran, with the museum, I know you held a number of positions. You were on the board of trustees.
Yes.
Tell us about all the positions you had there.
Well, on the board of trustees, it was very interesting. Again, the one thing that we were always looking for is how to get more money so we could continue to operate and get the word out into the community that aviation was a good thing to get into. And so one of the, we thought, easiest ways was to go ahead and have air shows, and that worked pretty good a couple of times. And there was also times that it wasn't so good.
These are the big jet shows with the Thunderbirds and the Blue Angels?
Yes, we were able to do that. In fact, I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think the first show we had one of those two groups in to kind of drew the crowd in from all over.
Yeah.
And just kept on expanding. And back in those days, I worked on building the fences for air shows, because you had to set up dividers so the people coming in to see the show couldn't get onto the grounds where they might be struck by a plane or other traffic going in and out.
I used to volunteer for those. I remember they were some of the best times I had.
I know that was for an air show because I see the fencing.
Is this Dan DeBellis?
Yes.
Who else is in the photograph?
I can't tell you their names, but I'm the tall one, you can tell there. But anyway, that was one of the shows, and I'm not sure which one it was. On the back of that it says 2000, but I can't believe that was done in 2000.
Well, I was probably there. I enjoyed them all. Now, you were also, I know, Fran, operations manager at the museum?
Yeah. Again, I was retired from GE and had extra time. And our director got another job and left. And a young lady, I wish I could think of her name, but I can't, took over. And we're doing an excellent job. But she and her husband decided they were going to move to Florida.
Oh.
And all of a sudden, we had a couple other office workers up there, and at that time, and I said, well, all right, I'll go ahead and do what has to be done. Don't call me director, though, because I have no knowledge as to museum work. So I said, if you want to call me manager of operations, okay. And so I spent a year and a half, 2 years doing that.
What approximate years were those?
Oh, golly. I can't remember, to be honest with you. But I'm guessing late 90s.
Okay.
And we got it going, kept it going, had more volunteers were coming in, and we had a good group of volunteers to do the restoration work. And so we decided, okay, we got to have a place for them to work. And Carl Battaglia and Ernie decided, okay, we got to get money to do this. And they approached the gentleman in charge of the Tresco Bank and got, I believe it was $25,000 to build what is now the restoration hangar.
All right. Which is named, we dedicated to Wally Holbrook. Who
Yes.
I know you knew and worked with.
Yes, I knew Wally, yeah. And got that up and give them a place to pull a plane in and work. And we were thinking that back in those days, an airplane, oh my gosh, they're not very big, you can pull them in anywhere. Then all of a sudden we started getting military planes. No way you're going to get military planes.
Do you remember the first one that was acquired?
Not really.
Huh?
But so many of them over the years that I just don't remember which was which.
Yeah, we have about 25 now.
Yes.
In 3 helicopters.
Yeah.
And it's quite a collection.
Nice collection.
So the effort that you started then has really
took off.
Has really taken off, and we still talk about at the museum. Though, as you know, volunteer organizations can be somewhat challenging at times. Getting people to work together, but I know they'll frequently say, well, you should do what Fran Miner did. He had again, I think this speaks of your great organizational skills and management, in that he got everybody to work together and would have regular meetings of the volunteer groups, and that way they could focus on priorities and getting the job done.
Yeah. it worked out good because they, in a sense, made the priority, the group, rather than saying from the office, here, do this. That just doesn't work. So, and we did the same thing when we started doing exhibits committee. Let the committee get together and talk about what should be done and when, and then follow it up and give them the tools to do it if we could.
What were some of the major exhibits that you worked on besides the Akagi?
Well, let's see. The major ones was I can't think of the name of the aircraft. It's hanging up down the corner in Gallery 1.
The Curtis Pusher?
Yes. That was one of the first ones we got in. And
that's a remarkable exhibit. I think it's a replica of a 1906 or 1910 Curtis Pusher, which was this, Glenn Curtis, of course, the first great aviator from New York, and flew it, I remember, in 1910 from Albany Airport, which was down in the port of Albany, to New York City. It was a milestone. We celebrated back in 2010 with the port of Albany. We had an event to commemorate that. That was a spectacular exhibit. I mean, hanging it from the ceiling must have been
that was fun trying to get that up to the ceiling.
Yeah, it's a very fragile-looking plane, huge wingspan. What other ones did you work on?
Well, there was a whole bunch of us that got together on that. But before we could put that plane up, we had to make a new wall for that room. When we took over that room, the area was set aside by Richmore for mechanic work, and all they had to divide it from the rest of the hangar was plastic sheeting that was just plain hanging down to keep the cold air out, because they had some kind of a heater unit in there. So for us to go ahead and build a wall, we said, all right, what do we do? And we were told we couldn't use 2x4s, so we had to go get aluminum studding and learn how to put studding together for that wall. And as you know, it's high.
Yes.
And then we had to learn how we were going to handle all of the 3/4 inch wall board and get that up and get it all insulated before we could hang that aircraft. And we had to have a couple of doors in it so we could get the aircraft in, not with the wings on, but in pieces.
Oh, really?
And then put it back together.
And you had to assemble it inside the museum, and then
put it together, and then pulled it up there on ropes.
That's a story I've never heard. You must have had a lot of volunteers.
It took quite a few.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But it was thrilling to do it, because how many of us had even seen an airplane made out of wood,
Oh, yes.
And even today, people come in and say, what is that made of? And you tell them wood.
When we give tours, I usually start over there. It's like, the beginning of aviation. It looks just almost like the Wright Flyer.
Yes.
And open seat and wooden wing spars, and I think fabric covering the wings, and the control surfaces were very different too, weren't they?
Right, they were.
Pitch and roll control.
The one thing over there that you have, I think you still have, are the wooden propellers.
Yes.
And if you stop to think about it, they had to be done precisely.
What were they made of? What kind of wood do you think? Obviously a hardwood.
Yes, they're hardwood, but I'm not sure what it is.
And many of them have, I know, metal leading edges on each of the
on leading edges, yes.
On each of the blades, usually two bladed propellers, and many of them are signed. And
yes.
Oh, it's a pretty good collection.
It turned out to be a fairly good group.
Mm-hmm. Now, I remember you recruited me in 2000. I think it was 2001 on exhibits. I think I helped on a few exhibits, and then
I'm sure you did, believe me.
And I remember it was also, again, very organized, and we were at the time, I think, redoing some of the exhibits in Gallery 2, And now, I think the latest projects you've seen is we completed the Battaglia, or are completing the Battaglia space room. So the lunar rover is up there, and then
that is
also,
a nice design.
Yes, and also completing an exhibit which is under construction right now on the Malta Rocket Test Center, which General Electric also operated. So I think we're just like you were doing. You really laid the foundation for many of the projects there and the efforts, and methodically repairing, maintaining, and developing new exhibits, which is again can be challenging with a volunteer organization. What's your impression of the direction the museum is going now?
Well, I think we've got to get a little bit more advertising involved, because there's so many people that have no idea what we have over there. In fact, when I came in here 10 months ago, I started talking to people, as I always did, about some of the things, and talking about the Air Museum. They said, "What Air Museum?" And to me, that,
we get that all the time. That people will say, "Oh, we've driven past here," and as you know, it's a non-profit organization, so we don't.
You're right.
We certainly do have to put an emphasis on advertising. Thanks to Josh here, we've done our website and really, really expanded that effort. But there's always more to do in that area.
Yes, there is, and but that's the big one. And the way to, in my opinion, to help out on that is to prepare a 20-question list. Now, by that I mean, when you first walk into Exhibit 1, I believe there's a big board there of all of the areas in the state of New York.
Yes.
That there was aviation.
Yeah, right. All
Okay.
the companies that were aviation-related companies in New York State.
So question number 1, how many places in the state of New York did we have manufacturing of aircraft material? Not necessarily a whole aircraft, but material.
Subcontracting companies.
And number 2 could be, what were hot air balloons used for in the Civil War? You've got
we have a diorama
of it.
Yeah.
So you've got it there, and you could find the answer. What slowed down the forward movement of balloons? You've got the grappling hooks.
Yes.
That's there. And you could go all the way around there and come up with about 20 questions.
Fran, for the 15 years that I've been there, I always find something new,
Yeah.
And last weekend, as a matter of fact, it's very opportune you said that. Last weekend, it was kind of slow, and I was looking around, and that was when I discovered the balloon grappling exhibit there. And I read it and said, "Geez, I never," it's like all these little nooks and crannies there, but it was one I had never really paid attention to that much.
Well, there's so many things that you could come up with a list of 20 questions, which could be put out on a sheet of paper, delivered to the school groups at the schools, and say, okay, see how many can get the correct answers on these, and put on that particular sheet the fact that the answers can be found and shown at the museum. You might get people to say, well, all right, let's go down. Certainly the young folks would get saying, well, I want to see this. I want to go find out.
Yes.
And it would do 2 things. It would advertise the museum, and it would certainly get young people more interested.
Yes, I think I certainly, and I know my colleagues at the museum on the board of trustees and all the volunteers see that as a key direction for the museum to do is partnerships with schools.
Yes.
Outreach, programs right at the museum, but also off-site at schools in the area.
Right.
And I think we all agree, Fran, I think that's the key to the museum, to not only nurture, I guess, the next museum stewards, but also to provide advertising and outreach.
Yes. So that would be, I think, one of the approaches that might help to move forward. And
overall, you seem to have had a positive experience there. I know.
oh yes, yeah, I enjoyed it very much. And as you know, it was 8 years ago, I had an accident, and not at the museum, but that kind of knocked me out of being able to go. And I miss it, no question about it.
Well, we'd like to have you over. Maybe help us with the breakfast. Organize the monthly breakfast. Which
well, I can't even do that. I'm sorry. My legs just won't let me. You know, it's one thing, I guess, when I was young and I had problems, okay, it kind of wore off after a while. And now at 90, it doesn't wear off.
Well, Fran, I want to really thank you for the time you spent here, and really like a history of the museum, how it all started, and which defines where we are right now. So I want to thank you again, Fran, for taking the time.
Welcome.
You've been you could not have been more supportive of me and the other trustees over there in the board.
Well, I know you've done a lot.
Well, thank you, and we thank you for all the really putting it in place, preparing the foundation for the museum, so to speak.
Well, it was fun.
Yeah,
it was fun.
And I also want to thank Josh Nagy, who's our ace videographer and has conducted these, produces these interviews. Thank you, Josh, and thanks again, Fran.
Well, you're welcome.